Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Operation Miss podcast, where we talk to amazing guests so that we can help equip women to survive pregnancy and thrive afterwards. And today, I am so excited to introduce Pamela Daniels. She is one of the most resilient and beautiful women I have ever met. And it was only a couple of months ago when we met, but I got to witness her protect her child while he was inside of her belly, create a team that she knew that she could trust, and then stand up for and advocate for herself before, during, and after delivery. And it is so beautiful to see a woman believe in herself enough to do all the things that she did, to make all of the sacrifices that she made. And so when you hear her story, you will fall in love and admire her just like I do. But I want to go ahead and turn it over to you, Pam, so that you can tell the people
Hi.
about you as a person, as a mom. You are absolutely beautiful, and I'm truly honored to know you and be talking with you tonight.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Catherine, for such kind words and sentiments. I really feel like I've known you forever, just from our ability to connect, even though we're a few miles away from each other. But yeah, I'm really happy to be here, and thank you so much
You're
for having me and inviting me.
welcome. Oh, well, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, I'm based in New Jersey, Jersey girl here, born and raised in Newark. I am the mom of two boys, so hashtag boy mom. I am I guess at heart, I'm a community organizer, so I think some of that might have contributed to my approach to handling the crises that we'll get into. But I'm a publicist, entrepreneur, publicist, as well as a strategic planner. And I have my own company, the Brickarati Group, and I support various projects throughout the state and also working on across the country a little bit now. So,
Wow.
yeah.
You go, girl.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Hold on one moment. Hello, Dr. Thompson. You are right on time. We are just finished introducing Ms. Pam. And so let's continue. So, can you tell us a little bit about your journey to your first delivery? So, how did your first pregnancy go, and what happened during that delivery time?
Sure. So my first child was I had a pandemic baby, 2020, where not only was this whole world of motherhood or expectant mom new, I had to do it mostly in seclusion. So it was a very interesting pregnancy, but also because of the projects that I was working on, I was actually able to get out by the time the summer came and worked on a project that was actually opening a drive-in movie theater. So I was very active. I have a way of compartmentalizing, which I'm still not sure if it's a asset or a liability. But because of that, I spent a lot of time on my feet. And I think overall, I was pretty healthy and pretty solid with just, my daily experience, the energy that I had to exert. Um, Flying all around. Um, and but didn't spend too much time thinking about, oh, should have a team and all these other things, right? That expected moms generally dive into. Like I did none of that, and almost did none of that again the second time around. But we'll get into that. So, but yeah, so I had a hospital birth. Um, I went up to 41 weeks and in a few days, what ended up being an additional few days, and went through some induced labor that I find out this time around that was sort of out of order. The order in which it was done wasn't I guess, the best practice. And so I ended up having a C-section for my first birth. My son was born in September of 2020, And yeah, it was very scary. I was in the hospital for about 4 or 5 days ahead in terms of um, the induction process, the failed induction. Well, I learned that term, failed induction, and then having the C-section. And then my son actually had to stay in the hospital for a couple of days. So I was in there for about a week, a little bit over a week. And yeah, but I brought home a healthy baby,
Yeah.
just with a lovely scar and pain and having to do everything that you need to do, as a single mom, needing to be mobile, and but yeah, with a lot of uphill climb with that.
Wow. So can you tell us what made you say yes to the induction the first time?
Um, what made me say yes to the induction? Well, again, I didn't have a lot of information to draw on, so I knew that it was my intent to deliver the baby. I didn't have too many preconceived notions about C-sections other than knowing that my mom had several C-sections, and I've heard some war stories about that. I have friends who had them. So it wasn't the first choice. And so when the option of the induction, was presented, again, me not knowing what was going to happen with that, and that turned out to be a very traumatic experience that I ended up having to repeat. But yeah, so I just say yes, just based off of the information that I had. Now, I did have a midwife there who I think um, was very helpful in getting me to make decisions because I was definitely delaying and just not wanting to kind of jump to anything. I'm wanting to, oh, well, do we have to do this right now, and so on. But she was really, really kind and really spoke to me like a human being, and I think she was very helpful. So definitely, I don't remember her name. I want to give her a shout out for sure. But yeah.
Wow. Okay, so the recovery can be extremely painful from a C-section. I'm so happy that you mentioned that because I have been hearing more and more often that there are some women who just opt to have it out of convenience or, they feel like it is the other way to birth. So that there are no increased risks or no there's no reason to not do it. They don't really look at it as a major surgery. So thank you for bringing that up. It is not easy to recover following a
Yeah, I
C-section.
actually had complications during my recovery. So I ended up injuring myself. That's one way we could put it. I had a moment, the baby's on the bed, reached across to try and grab something and like ended up splitting my incision in a little area. And so that led to like almost like basically an infection. But because of the way that I was dressing my wound after kind of consulting, with my cousin on how I wanted to approach it because I didn't want to take antibiotics. I wouldn't advise that. It's not medical advice. But I took a naturopath, a homeopathic approach to dressing and healing my wound, and which I know contributed to a much better healing process even after that injury. But it was a complication that again wasn't preemptively shared that these things can happen. You move in a way that you think you're normal. Everything is fine. Even I feel this pain, but I can still, just quickly, adjust my body to do something that it normally would do. No, you can't.
Yes.
Learned that the hard way, and it was definitely extremely painful. But I was able to like I said, to heal myself and saw, daily improvements, through the plan that we implemented.
Wow.
And
Wow.
surprised the doctor when I came back in because he wasn't expecting my wound to look like the way it did or to heal as fast as it did. I mean, he was shocked because he told me it's going to be worse before it gets better. I'm like, okay,
Wow.
thanks, bro.
Right. I love that you said that sometimes we move in a way, we realize that it hurts, but sometimes you almost feel like, well, what else am I going to do? I'm a single mom. I have to get this done. And there are better ways to move, though. And as long as you have the right people to show you, it helps. And so, I just took a course from Dr. C. Graves, the Enhanced Recovery After Delivery. And she talks about the importance of having physical therapists there, especially following cesarean deliveries, and having physical therapists teach moms how to move, how to lift, how to get rid of excess swelling, how to decrease their pain naturally
Yeah.
not having to depend on medications all the time, how to use the bathroom. I mean, a lot of different things. And so having a physical therapist on board, occupational therapist on board would be so good for every mom, but especially for moms who have delivered by C-section.
Absolutely. I mean, Dr. Seagraves certainly came to my rescue after the fact and helped me. Well, not only did she connect with the doctors on the ground, she's across the country, but she connected with the doctors on the ground and got a physical therapist to come to me and to help me and support me, and also taught me about compression. And so instead of the healing, not healing yourself, through the process of just letting things sit, you kind of push it in and do a lot of binding, and the compression will help. And that certainly was like phenomenal change, in how we were able to just address the wound. So I definitely think a physical therapist, which was not something I would have thought of having, but like I said, you think you're able to adjust and maneuver the same way, and just figuring out how to properly get out of bed so that you're not in excruciating pain was really, really helpful.
Yeah. Okay, so let's fast forward. So you had this birth, and then a couple years later, or a year and a half later, you get
That's
pregnant.
2 years, just about 2 years
Okay.
later in terms of delivery.
Okay.
Yeah, so because of my experience in the first time around, when I found out I was pregnant, I definitely had it in my mind that I didn't want to go through what I went through. However, like I said, I'm a compartmentalizer, didn't really focus on, how am I going to do this? And, who should be on my team and all of that kind of stuff early on. Like it was just, we went through about 8 months, okay,
Oh
of me
no.
not acknowledging like coming up with the building blocks of what should happen. And then Dr. Seagraves again, said, Pamela, you need to have a doula. You need to really think about what is your birth plan. I mean, she said birth plan to me like 100 times. And then at some point it just finally clicked, like, okay, I need to really think about this. And so I was able to find a local doula. I actually ended up getting a 2-for-1 because the doula that I had worked with was going on vacation, and if I didn't deliver by the certain date, then she was going to send her backup, who ended up being amazing as well. So I had one doula that was, remote, and another one who was present. And so, but you just leading up to it, I got so much information from him again that I didn't crack open in the book, and certainly my doctor had never given me. But just in the few, weeks that we worked together, like I learned so much from her that I'd never heard from my doctor. And
Wow.
I'm just like, okay, so shouldn't some of this have been told to me by the doctor? I mean, just like a little bit, right? So a little bit could have been shared with me, but nothing. And every time I went to the doctor, it was just always, so do you have any questions? And that was it. Do you have any questions? Like, can you just give me like a baseline of some information that you think would be helpful to me? Like, no. So I really, just that alone, the doula support was just absolutely amazing. And what I did was able to do, and to my doctor's credit, I had been looking for a VBAC doctor. I had learned what that term was. I knew I couldn't go back to the former place because the hospital that I delivered my first son at, they have a policy that they do not, if you have a C-section there, then you can only have C-sections. They will not do vaginal deliveries. So I
Wow.
knew ahead of time that I couldn't go back there. So I've been looking for someone who was willing to let me, in quotes, do a VBAC.
Girl.
And so the doctor that I ended up retaining was in support of that. But what ended up happening was, again, my babies were late, and I have a whole thought process on these dates that they set in stone and that they characterize as late
Yeah.
when it just not it, this the window is like at least 2 weeks, right, that they can be off. And so, but regardless, the fact that I was, quote, overdue really ended up changing the tune of the doctor. And so there was a new attitude to really try and get me to do a C-section, which I was not happy about.
Yeah. And so I really love that you said that. Number one, the amount of information that you are able to get from a doula is great. I mean, from a lot of different health professionals. The thing about it is that no one professional can do it all. And so I think the women who have the best experiences are the ones who recruit people from a bunch of different areas so that they can get all the information they need so that they can make informed decisions. The other thing that we see, unfortunately, is exactly what you said. There are a lot of people who are, quote unquote, okay with you having a vaginal birth after a cesarean delivery up until you get to 40 weeks or 41 weeks or, some time frame. And so we try to get moms to ask that question at the beginning. So is there a certain time after which you're going to say, I have to induce or I have to have a C-section? If that is the case, what is that time? And then a mom can make an informed decision, just like you did the second time around. It was like, okay, I know I can't deliver at that hospital because they're going to make me have a C-section. So I want to deliver somewhere else. So you were able to, with the information you had, make a better decision. But it is very unfortunate because, this story is so mind-boggling how hard you had to fight during your labor so that you could deliver the way you wanted to. It's almost like you were back at that other hospital where the C-section was the only option, even though you have a very well working vagina out of which you can push a baby. And so let's talk about that. So, we connected because Dr. Seagraves connected us, right? And your story I'm trying to think of where it is best to start it. So at what point did they say, okay, you need to come in for a C-section? And then you felt like, okay, I really have to do that. I have to admit myself.
So I was 41 weeks and maybe 2 days, I think it was. And I had just done a 2-mile walk, feeling real good. And when I went up until that time, every few days I was going into the hospital for monitoring, for fetal monitoring, and they checked the size of the baby, they checked heart rate, and just wanted to make sure everything was okay. And since I was not admitting myself up until that point, they basically said, all right, well, we'll meet you halfway. Can you just come in, every couple of days, basically what it ended up being. So I agreed to that. And the day that I had, the last day that I come in for that monitoring, they told me that the ultrasound, it looked like I had, my placenta, what was it? My placenta was
dead.
Yeah, basically, I forgot the word they used, and that there was no water.
Mm-hmm.
Calcified, there we go. Calcified placenta, and there was no water in my uterus. I don't know. I guess
around the baby, right?
Yeah, there was no water around the baby. So that was like midday. Up until that point, I did like the 45-minute monitoring, and then basically they wanted me to come. They wanted to send me right up for the more extensive monitoring. But I had to get my affairs in order before I could do that. And then I eventually agreed to come back. And when they basically checked me in, put me on the monitor, I mean, everything was fine in the sense of, the baby had a strong heart rate. They were all in agreement that there was no water, but after my examination, they said that my water hadn't burst, hadn't broke up until that point. But yeah, at that point, I just allowed myself to be there in their care.
Yeah. So this is important, right? So you're at the doctor's office. You're told that the placenta is not working anymore. And so you're putting your baby at risk. Because these are some of the things, because we want to make sure the verbiage is out there so that people understand what is sometimes said. So you're putting your baby at risk if you leave, if you sit down in the car, you can sit on the umbilical cord. You never know what's going to happen to your baby. Now, if something happens, that's on you. Oh, how optimistic you were to come without your bag. You knew that you could possibly be admitted. It is language that can make a woman nervous about delivering, nervous about continuing to carry on with her pregnancy. And these are things that women have to have the mental fortitude and the prior knowledge, or at least people on their team to help them make objective decisions, because at this point you would be making a decision out of fear otherwise.
Yeah, the other thing they were saying had to do with the size of my baby. The last ultrasound that I had taken, they estimated the baby was 9 pounds, 3 ounces. And they said, well, a baby that size, sorry, you hear my son in the background, a baby that size, when upon delivery, vaginal delivery, he could suffer from shoulder dystocia. And that was said to me so many times in trying to get me to just agree that I had the baby cut out. And I think that was probably something that definitely, just kind of planted in my mind but for a while, because it was something that was constantly said, constantly, like just trying to wear me down. So.
Yeah. And you should not be made to feel like you're trying to be worn down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Can you tell us what made you say, okay, I hear what they're saying, I still want to try for a vaginal delivery?
So the first night I got there, they didn't do anything. They put me on the monitor. There was basically, because I didn't agree, the attending doctor, who happened to be the chief of the department, was the on duty that night, and he actually ended up being on duty the night I delivered. But he basically said, since I wasn't agreeing to a C-section, which would have been the best scenario, for me and my baby, there's nothing they can do tonight. Maybe the morning shift might consider something else, some other options, but just have a good sleep. That's basically what he said. I signed some paperwork, that giving them permission that if something happens in the middle, these are their words, if something happened in the middle of the night and I have to be rushed off to emergency C-section, then I need to sign permission for that to occur. So I signed a lot of things related to that, was all presented in, worst case scenarios presentation. But the next morning, I met a course of 3 midwives over the course of my stay. And so the first midwife, I met the next morning, and she was the first relatively optimistic person to say, well, let's try induction. Up until that point, I didn't, I was having flashbacks of the induction process. And so I didn't want it, like, going in. But when I realized that there were the options, were to have a C-section or try these induction steps, or try nothing. But, at that point, I definitely, I guess, had comfort in knowing that the monitor was there, and like I'm hearing my baby's heartbeat, and I'm personally monitoring his heart rate. And the calcified placenta was definitely like ringing in my head. So the safety of just me being able to hear his heartbeat, kept me there. Yeah. And the next morning when the midwife came in, she basically said, we can put the Foley, right?
Yeah, the Foley bowl.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Foley bowl in there, and see what happens. It's 12 hours, and it was not easy. I mean, it was a really, really, really hard insertion, but she got it, and I mean, and it took a while, and so I mean, it was just like the first win, like, okay, we got this thing in here, and so I think it just, through the whole thing, it was just a series of tiny wins that just kept me moving forward with the process. Wasn't the process that I wanted, I wanted to just let my body tell me, but I felt like I had to actively do something to at least keep these people at bay, from keep their knives away from me. and go in this direction of, okay, an induction. And then as they were explaining the process of the induction, and the midwife, I mean, I think the midwives definitely spoke to me in a different, again, a different, using different language and different understanding than the doctors. I realized that the way that my induction was done last time wasn't done in the same order as this one. They put the fold, like I was put on Pitocin right away in the first one. This one, they gave me the Foley and we did the 12 hours first, and then at the end of the 12 hours, I was actually 4 centimeters. I woke up the next morning, I lost a centimeter. So that was like but yeah, but it started the process. And so I kind of at that point just committed to, okay, so how do we do this right, do this successfully? And that's where all of the phone calls and the text messages and everything when you guys came in, I'm like, all right, how do I make sure they do this thing right and they don't kill my uterus? All right. And that was the adventure from that point, that second day.
Yeah. Okay. So then let's talk about the Pitocin, because sometimes people don't realize that you can take a break from the Pitocin, right? So can you explain how the Pitocin process works, and just go ahead and
Yes.
tell us that.
So, and these will not be the proper terms, expressions,
It's
but
okay.
the scale is basically 1 to 20. And what it seems the normal practice is, in order to get you to the rhythm, the height of the rhythm that you need in order to for your body to go into labor, they generally just turn it on and pump you up and get you to the rhythm. But other things are supposed to be happening in your body besides that labor, like the cervix thinning out and all these other different pieces. And so if you just kind of turn the spigot on up to 20 in the first, 8 hours, then you haven't given your body a chance to actually do what it's supposed to do. So I controlled how that Pitocin was going to be, distributed. We did end up taking breaks, overnight breaks. We sat at levels for a while, longer than they wanted to. We stopped, kind of leading up to what ended up being I think we stopped like maybe halfway, like on the second, the third day, maybe, and just, oh, you're okay. Sorry, he's waking up.
Don't be sorry. We love babies on the. Please don't be sorry.
Right. And yeah, the wins on the way that we rolled out the Pitocin did allow my cervix to thin out. They were surprised when when they were checking me. The effacement, was happening. So we went from 0 to a certain percentage, 50%, 75%, and 100%. And I was at 100% for a while, even before my dilation got to where it needed to be. So dilation was like the very last thing that happened. But so because of that, they were still calling it a failure. And I'm sitting here like, well, hold up. Okay, I effaced over these few days. Like, my cervix is the right thing. Like, what do you anyway? So and up until again the night of the conversation that I had with that the chief of the department and my doctor, was, well, what how long are you going to do this before you let us have this C-section? And I just basically said, well, I'm going to sleep on this and then we'll figure it out in the morning. And this was 4 days in at this point. So I was picking him up.
That's fine. Because one thing I want to say, the language sometimes that we use as women, they let me do this. They let me try this. It's like, no, you had to, for everything, you had to fight for it. All they were, oh, hey, okay, introduce him to our people.
So this is Zakai Jethro. who
Oh,
only has an angry face. He hasn't discovered smiles yet. So we got
girl,
the
he's still
angry
mad at
face.
those doctors.
Yes, yes.
He's still mad at them. He is
Hey.
precious. But you have to ask for what you want. And that's what I mean, when you say the only option they gave you was C-section. And then you said, well, no, I'm not going to do that. So then they kept offering you a C-section and finally conceded to an induction. You shouldn't have to fight for that. When there's nothing wrong with you, nothing wrong with the baby, it is hard to have to you be the one presenting the options. And so if you don't have anyone helping you present options, then you're without resources. And the amount of time it took for you to deliver, because you didn't go in after your contraction started or anything like that, it does extend the amount of time that you're there. And one thing that we really want listeners to know is if you are admitted to the hospital, you decide to go into the hospital because you want to be able to see your baby monitored, you should feel okay about the amount of time that it takes to deliver, especially if you were scared into going into the hospital, because that's essentially why you went. You didn't go because you just wanted to admit yourself. You went because you were scared. So once you're there, then you should feel a peace of mind like you did and just really let your body go through the process. And that is hard to do in the midst of people who are trying for that process to end up in a C-section, because I'm telling you, it was every 3 hours that someone was offering you a C-section.
Yeah, it was. And again, like there were definitely staff members who were like cheerleading, like, oh, this girl's gonna try, is really trying to make this happen. And there were some, who were like probably taking bets, like she ain't gonna make this. She's just being difficult. She's wasting her time, you know. But I had some real champions in there. One nurse, Deandra, that came in there. She stayed with me like for like her whole shift. We were like, don't you got other patients? But she was really trying to get the rhythm, together, and was helping, it was when we were doing the turn up, of the Pitocin. And I was also working on my doula. I was getting on the ball. I always had to be readjusted because everything was falling. And she just kind of stayed there, for a while. And then that same day was when the I think it was like the second or the third midwife who came in, and just really was just encouraging, just saying, like, I think, it's worth a try. Like, it's worth a try for you to keep, for you to do this. She was okay with the taking a break, really understood like the pacing that we were talking about. And even another nurse who came in the morning after we had turned everything off and just said, all right, I'm going to bed, I'm going to sleep. She came in the next morning like, when's the last time you had something to eat? When's the last time you took a shower? So she just came and said, okay, today's the day. We're going to forget everything you did there before. Like, I'm gonna find you some clothes, like find you, a new a gown. I'm gonna get you this, get you that. I said, is there a shower curtain? She's like, I'm gonna find a shower curtain. There was no shower curtains in the showers. I'm like, this makes no sense. But she found the shower curtain. She put up, it was a little short. She's like, listen, this is what we got, okay?
Yeah.
But I mean, just her whole energy, just turned everything around from the kind of feeling defeated, like, okay, we had to turn this thing off, we're gonna have to start all over again. It was just, that was Karen. Ironically, her name was Karen too. So we joked about that.
I love it.
Yeah, it was just definitely, and it was later that day that the effacement changes happened.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, so it's really nice that you brought up all the different ways that you can progress. So position of the cervix, right? We talked about that. Thinning of the cervix, the movement of the baby's position. So
yeah, the
how far the baby is down into the canal. Yeah, and so all of those things are progress. It's not just the dilation, and so that's really important for people to realize. You are not stalled if you don't do the one thing that people are wanting you to do, if the contractions are not coming as quickly or as strongly as they want them to come. And so so you pausing the Pitocin, though, so important that while you paused, that you ate, that you rested, that you hydrated. Sometimes women are going 3, 4, 5 days and they're not eating. And so sometimes you need reminders. And so it's really good that you did that.
Okay, well, that was also I was gonna say that was also part of the remembering from the first time, the trauma of the first time around. Like they starved me for days, and I had my best friend who was pregnant at the time as well. She stayed with me again during the pandemic. So if you came, you had to stay, right? So she couldn't leave, and so they brought her food, and she's in my room eating, and I couldn't eat. I'm like, okay, we're not doing this again, all right? Like we're not doing this again. So I have my illegal food, and I was able to eat, but Karen asked me, like, so what's the last we ate? I'm like, well, legally, it's been like 4 days, but illegally, I've been eating a little bit of something.
Yes, we need fuel to deliver babies. It takes energy. So, okay, so let's flash forward to when you actually delivered. So, because one other thing I love that you said, let's reassess in the morning. If that became our thing, right? Let's just reassess in the morning. Let's see what Good morning.
We're just gonna talk about this later.
That you said that because there is no harm in waiting. There's no harm in seeing what progress is going to be made, especially because they are monitoring you, monitoring the baby. I think that because the hospital system is a business, they have multiple things that they have to be thinking about. As a mom, your job is to protect and care for your baby and yourself, because at the end of the day, the hospital will continue to stand even after you leave. Where there are moms who pass away, there are moms whose babies die. The hospital stays open, and the mom is the one that has to go home grieving. And so if it's not a physical grief, if it's not a loss, then sometimes it is what happens to our bodies in the process. And so you deserve the right to choose what happens and to continue to be informed about the state of, health of you and your baby, and not feel rushed into a decision. So I love that you kept asking, let's reassess, and that you had providers, like you said, who, at the end of the day, you had some who respected your decision and also supported you in the decision that you wanted to make. So, okay, so now we get to the delivery. Tell us what happened. Tell us how you felt.
So things kind of just went into warp speed at a certain point. So after I had said for the last time to the chief and to my doctor that we'll just see what happens in the morning, I was basically letting them know I want to turn the Pitocin off. The midwife that I met on like the second day was there, and when she came in for her shift, she said, I know you've been checked several times. We're just gonna wait, to check you a little bit later, because that whole process is just extremely uncomfortable. And so I ate and I went to sleep. When I woke up, I had spoke to my father, who I hadn't spoken to through this whole process, and was going through some stuff with. And after that conversation, the midwife came back in. She set me up on a peanut ball when she came in. She said, let's just try this position. It was so uncomfortable. I felt like my hip was being dislocated. But then I got off the phone. She came in, she checked me, and she said, you're 9 centimeters. I was like, what? Like, and then like she switched sides. Like I turned over to the other side. And so I wasn't looking straight on anymore. And then I'm just hearing all of this movement happen in the room. So many people came in, the bed did a whole transformer thing around me. I mean, it was so fast. And then she's just like in drill sergeant mode, the midwife at this point, like, this is what's going to happen. This is what I'm going to need you to do. You're going to have to hold on to this. You're going to have to give me a certain amount of breast between. So, I mean, she was just running down this whole list of like what's about to go down. I asked her if the chief was going to be there because he was working the night again. She told me he was, but he'll be in the back. He would just observe. I'm like, because I don't want him in here. But she said she's running the show basically. I was like, okay, cool. So I was pretty much in like life preservation mode at that point, right? So because it was just so much happening, and I'm like breathing, going through the breathing techniques, that I had learned over the course of 4 days, and and it gave me such control of what I was feeling and how I was feeling it. I did have an epidural, so I was only dealing with pressure, not pressure and pain, which I am okay with. After what I was hearing, like the night before, there was like some crazy screams going on in the hospital, and I'm just like, okay, I don't want to know what a 10 feels like. But the pressure was definitely like I understood what they were saying about the pressure and just the feeling of having to poop and all. It was intense. But the midwife said, don't push unless you absolutely feel like you have to, but just working on it with the controlled breath. So I'm like, okay. So I was just like locked into doing that. She eventually had to tell me, all right, it's time to push. Just like, girl, what you doing? Like, cause she was waiting for me to tell her, like, okay, I really feel like, but I'm like, I was okay because I was just breathing. You told me to breathe this baby out. So
that is what we tell everybody. Breathe the baby out.
I'm not going to breathe this baby out. And then it came time to do the pushes, and then just the signs of all of like how the contractions and the riding of the wave and how the contractions are moving. I mean, it just all fell into place of understanding like what was supposed to be happening at that moment. So the only other last hurdle was just for me to understand the right muscle to use for the big pushes, and that took a couple of tries. I'm like, where? I couldn't find it. I'm like trying to get the right and then I did, and I was holding on to these hooks that I have no idea where they came from, but they were there. And the big one, she came, and then she's like, I see the head. Okay, here are the shoulders. And then I just felt the boo, boo, boo. I was like, oh my God, I think a baby just came out of me. And then they showed them to me, and I was just like kind of frozen at that point, like, oh my God, I can't believe this just happened. And it was really so fast. Like all the days I was dealing with everything, like that process was like 10 minutes. Like I'm actually getting the baby out. It was so quick.
Yeah.
And I had a baby vaginally.
Yeah, there he is. Yes.
And he was only 8 pounds, 6 ounces. Okay.
Right.
There was no soldier dystocia in Jesus' name.
Amen.
And he was healthy.
Yeah.
He was healthy and awesome. Aren't you awesome? Yeah, you're awesome.
Oh my gosh. Well, hey y'all, it's Jessica here. I came on late, so I haven't been asking questions. But Pamela, let me just say you are like the best storyteller like I think we've ever had on the podcast. I am not. Am I telling the story?
Girl, she's good.
You're good.
She got a story to tell though, don't she?
You have a story.
It was quite the experience.
Hell. And I know like people are listening, and you're doing a great job telling the story, and Catherine, you're always great with asking the questions. But I know people are still that are listening are still like, oh my gosh, what just happened? This girl's in the hospital for how long? And what was wrong with her placenta? Oh, speaking of placenta, can you tell us about that? So after you gave birth to the baby, then the placenta, was
oh
it?
My God. Yeah. Well, then she said, okay, now you have to deliver the placenta. I'm like, what? Well, I have no idea what that meant. It was just, and I just had to do like another push, I think. Like, I don't remember. It was like at that point, everything she did to like wrap up was very traumatic. Like it was that the placenta, I did tear, so she had to do that. That was absolutely awful. And then she said, I have to get the clots out. And she's like pulling on my stomach and pushing stuff out. And I'm just like, okay, goodness, this is terrible. But I mean, she was a G. Like she was so cool. Like I felt so comfortable with her, and I felt like she knew what she was doing. And the chief wasn't there. He didn't come the entire time. He came at all the way at the end after the whole show was over. And he just saw the baby. Like,
what
ain't nothing. Congratulations, Mom. That was it. Like, yeah, you bully.
Right. Now, two things. You were 100% effaced for a while. And do you remember you were like, how long do I wait? How long do you tell a woman to wait? Will you tell us how long do they?
Yeah, I was, and that's the thing. Like, I was effaced. The position wasn't like all the way down, but we had had a couple of notches down, right, from the original position, from 3, I think it was, right? So we were down to like maybe 1 by then. So, and it's just, there was just no, I mean, they kept telling me, you're still 3 centimeters, you're still 3 centimeters. And it was just, I'm like, well, I don't know what to tell you, but clearly I'm having a baby at some point in the next couple days, right? So,
That's right.
and it went from no change at all, to these things very distinctively happening, to y'all surprise too. So, so yeah, I mean, again, like that's when I had to call you guys and text you guys, like, what's the right answer to this? Because I still don't want a C-section.
Right, right. So you just wait, like your body will do it. I think that's what I love about your story, Pam. If you had stopped at any point, day 2, day 3, day 3.5, then the people listening, you would have had a C-section, right? And then it would have just been like, well, I had to have a C-section. My body wasn't going to deliver. No, your body, if you waited on the rule, which is to let your contractions be, oh goodness, the 3-1-1 rule now, 3 minutes apart for at least 1 minute for each contraction for at least an hour, then you would have never been in the situation. This is my sweet girl who is supposed to be inside. So say hi, Crystal Lily.
Crystal Lily. Oh, that is beautiful.
It is beautiful. Hey, girl. Thank you.
Yeah. Let me pause this. But Jessica, will you continue talking about the 3-1-1 rule so that everyone knows that if she had waited, that she wouldn't even have been there for 4 or 5 days. It would have just been. Go ahead.
And that's the thing, like with your story, like Catherine was saying, like you were, I hate to use the word bully, but people tell you all the worst things that can happen. I guess because it's their job, but also they want it to be done a certain way. So that's why and that's when I would say people might have questions like, she was in the hospital for 4 days, like that's why that happened, because you went sooner than you actually had to, because they were trying to bully you into doing something that you didn't want to do, which was a C-section. So typically we tell folks to, especially when you have a birth plan and it does not involve a C-section, you want to labor at home. You want to stay at home, because if you go to the hospital before, you start to get into like active labor or get super close to active labor, they will start to try to induce you. They may do it the wrong way. Pamela's story is not like everybody's story when they can kind of control the Pitocin. That usually does not happen. So they do it too much too soon. It can lead you in that domino effect, and you're in right back up into like an emergency C-section. So I lost my train of thought, Catherine.
It's okay. Well, one thing I just wanted to say, like, I think we never went past. I have to ask my friend who was listening the whole time, but I think we never went past 11 or 12 on the Pitocin scale, something like that, around there. And the other thing was, I was the chief doctor. He told me the bishop score that they gave me, that was the other one, was 27%. Like there was a 27% chance for me to be able to have a successful VBAC. And so when the midwife was there when he said that, so when he left, we had a conversation. She said, well, that's what they got. She's like, I got slightly higher. I got 37%, but we're gonna try. We're gonna try. But yeah, I'm like, okay, y'all got zero faith in me.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that when you look at the research and like what they say in terms of the success rate of someone having a vaginal birth or being eligible for a vaginal birth following a cesarean delivery, is 80%. 80% chance that things will go great if you,
which makes sense, because the
80% of the people are eligible to have a VBAC. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, well, that is in line with the authorization forms that I signed. That basically tells you all these risks, right, of the VBAC. but then also in the same breath says that the best possible outcomes for mom and baby is to have a vaginal delivery. Right. So it's like, okay, so this is the best case scenario, but you're still what you say is completely opposite to what clearly the research even shows.
And that's what like Catherine was saying about how hospital systems are thinking about so many things at once because they are a business. And I feel like in those moments, they're more so thinking about legalities and liabilities than a mom's like quality of life and her care. Yeah. In those moments when I have to say these negative things, I don't have to say, or I choose not to say these other things because I'm afraid of being sued and liability and stuff. But the 311 rule, I had to look on my phone at the March of Dimes to make sure I get it right because these numbers, and it gets me every time, but we know it's a thing. So the 311 rule that Catherine was mentioning about was contractions are 3 minutes apart, lasting for 1 minute for at least an hour. And so once you get there, that's when you want to go into the hospital if you're choosing to deliver at the hospital, because that's when your body is, that close to active labor, and it's kind of like time to get there. Because if you go to the hospital just because, they said I was going to deliver on Thursday, it's Thursday, I'm going to show up, and nothing has happened and changed, not knowing that due dates are just estimates and they're wrong like 80% of the time, I think. If you go too soon, if you go to a hospital with medical professionals, the way that they induce you or the way that they get things to go in the direction they want to, which is delivery, is through medicine, through like medical treatments and things like that. So those things are not in your birth plan. Like if you can't be one to say you don't want Pitocin and you don't want a C-section and you go into the hospital and nothing is showing that you're like in active labor, because you will lead down that path. Because Pamela's story is just so unique. It is not the same for everybody. And she really had to stand firm in what she wanted. And she also had healthcare professionals on her team to educate her. And because she was educated, she kind of, as the days went by, fear kind of went away and she was more confident in her body. And luckily, like she was monitored and her baby was monitored. That was a unique thing about her waiting and, on her labor to progress in the hospital, because she was able to have that monitoring. And it's just a beautiful story, but it's so not everybody's. And but it's so powerful because the fact that you weren't just talking to any OB, like you were talking to the chief at the hospital, honey, and you were like, we'll talk about this in the morning, because the monitor says I'm okay and my baby's okay. Like that's amazing. But I'm so happy that you also mentioned the people that were there on staff that were on your team, because there was some people there on the staff that were not on your team. They just weren't. They didn't want to be a part of your team and your plan for your body, which drives me insane. People want to run the show with what's going on your body, but you ran your show, and then eventually I think people started to observe you like, wait a minute, she really isn't doing anything wrong. This is just different from what we're used to doing in the hospital. This actually is really cool. Like, let me go see what she needs. Like, do I need to give you a shower curtain or some food? I feel like maybe at first, because we're healthcare professionals, so we know when people come in the door and they go against the norm, it's so easy for that to rub you the wrong way and you to get offended as a healthcare provider.
Because you know what's best.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be that way. But once they get to know you and, realize that, hey, no, this is her plan for her body and she's fine and healthy. So I guess we can do it this way, even though we're not accustomed to, and we can make this happen and be a beautiful experience. Yeah. So I'm glad that you got that out of that whole story, girl. Right.
I actually had one resident who was like, the Debbie Downer, because I saw her a couple of nights, and she was the one who was kind of blatantly saying, it doesn't look like your body is ready, is able to have a baby. She was like the one.
Yeah, she said your body's trying to tell you
Yeah.
is not wanting to have a vaginal delivery.
Exactly.
At 5 minutes apart. Contractions were 5 minutes apart, and she was 3 centimeters dilated. And that was the conclusion.
The
that
message.
so please go ahead.
But she was the only one who, after I was on, because they have the labor and delivery and then mother and baby. So when I was on the mother and baby side, she came over and checked on me, and she apologized, and she, congratulated me on the ability, to do it, and said, we were wrong, clearly. And that was really,
yes.
I wasn't expecting that from her. So
damn, you have changed. You don't understand that stories like yours, and I do want to say something, so I have to come back to this. The epidural situation, just so that people understand what happened with the epidural situation. She was given an epidural.
Forgot about that.
Of course, within 15 minutes was texting like, okay, they said something's wrong with the baby. We need to go ahead and have a C-section. Things aren't sounding right. And it turned out, upon further questioning, that put into the epidural was, oh Lord,
fentanyl.
Yeah, fentanyl. Yes. And of course, like the thing about it is everybody knows who is a medical professional that when that is given, that's going to affect the baby, or there is potential, very high potential for that to affect the baby.
And what was said was that it wouldn't affect the baby.
Right. And so a study was sent to you that explained what could happen to the baby, and how if you're on that for at least 5 hours, I believe is what the study said, that it actually shows up in the baby's urine after the baby is born.
Oh.
And so for you to be worried, Pam, of course, as a mom, you're looking and they're saying, okay, now the baby's not responding well. It's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. It's like, well, if someone came and gave me a narcotic, I probably wouldn't be able to respond to anything either. And so we have to think about that, right? And so luckily you were like, hey, so we asked what is in the epidural, and then of course they said fentanyl, and you were like, what did you
I was so shocked. This after I signed paperwork, after you done tried to hit me, like it took them like 3 times to get to the epidural done right. I mean, it was just backwards. And
it's just informed consent, right?
Yeah.
Like it should be informed is what I'm saying. And so if you're not asking though, you could really be consenting to things and it's not informed. So the reason I brought this up is because then you were able to say, you know what, I don't want that. Let's stop that. And can you give me something different? And they did. And everything turned around and it was fine. It's just like, as a mom though, your first instinct is to protect your child. Who cares about my body and how hard this recovery could be? I've done everything that I can up until this point, but I will not put my baby at risk. And so the amount of questions that you had to ask for clarification, the amount of advocating that you had to do for yourself, some women simply get tired. And so we want people who are listening to this episode to understand that the fight is going to last a little while if you're in a hospital system that is fighting against you, but that if you hold out and get the right information, that you can end up with a story like yours, Pam, that really can change the outlooks of a lot of healthcare professionals, because there are probably a lot of people who have never, like us, seen a woman advocate like you and then end up with a vaginal delivery. Because sometimes too, the stress will overtake you. I love that you were practicing those breathing exercises. Those are staples in our little tool bag, because you got to be able to have control. And if you don't, then your stress will overtake you. You won't progress, and then you will end up with a C-section. But you sitting there breathing when the baby's head is at your vaginal. Oh, girl, nobody's doing that. Everybody's doing, okay. So they're not used to that. Like you really, I don't think that you understand how you could have possibly changed an entire environment, an entire culture at the hospital, an entire belief system. You believed in yourself. You trusted the people that you recruited onto your team. And now you have a sweet, sweet baby, and you did not have to get cut again. So like, tell us, our listeners, anything that you want to say, of course, but please give advice to women and families, because you did this. I mean, you had support, but you had a 2-year-old that you needed somebody to watch. That's a long time. The system does not count on you having all that child care like you did so that you could be there that long. But any advice that you would give to anybody listening?
Sure. Well, definitely think about your team and who is going to be able to support you. And even if, we're in a remote world now, and the amount of support that I was able to have remotely, in addition to those who were able to be there in person, made all the difference. It was night and day experience because I had that support. Get a doula. For sure, you need a doula. And certainly if you can have, a physical therapist support, like it's just a different conversation that's being had with you. You can also request a midwife, to do your delivery. And especially since you work with a certain doctor, but it depends if you're going to be in a hospital, you might work with a certain doctor, but then depending on what day you actually go into labor, it could be any doctor. So just to know that if you're going to have a random person, let it be a midwife. But yeah, eat for sure. I think that made a huge difference, just to have the energy to not have headaches. Have your water. I had coconut water. I had essential water. I think that really just again, all they wanted to give me was ice, ice chips, which was great. I loved it, but that wasn't gonna be enough. But I would say just trust your instincts and say what that instinct was, and just stick by it. Just really understand that you can run the show. You can say, yes, I want that. No, I don't want that. And like, they have to abide by it. Like we just tend to think that, it's what the doctor says or what the doctor allows. And I just had a front row seat of realizing that that's not what the medical field is supposed to be at all. It's what you allow, it's what you enable. And yeah, I listened to my instincts, and got the confirmations I needed from the people I trusted, but every woman's gonna have the intuition to know like something is not right, or something didn't sound right, or something didn't come across right. And just trust that, ask that question. I think that's probably the most important thing, because when you're in the moment, you might do a whole bunch of prep and then you're in the situation and things can happen fast, or but that instinct is still like the spidey sense is going to go off on you no matter what's happening around you. So you just have to listen to that voice.
What a beautiful story. Jessica, are you go ahead.
No, I just want to thank you for talking to us and talking to our audience, and for, like Catherine said, the impact that you made on whatever hospital that was, because you have definitely, your experience is going to keep saving other moms and helping other moms for as long as those people on staff are working there, for sure. Definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, do you want to give a shout out to Dr. Seagraves before we get on?
Absolutely. You need to hire Dr. Seagraves, you need to hire Dr. Catherine, okay? And Miss Dr. Thompson as well. I mean, like I said, like I should have listened to Dr. Seagraves a lot earlier than I did. But what I was able to accomplish when I finally decided to listen, was all because of her. So yeah, enhanced recovery is just really, is caring about the whole mom, the whole baby, the whole picture, the whole scenario. And she was just amazing. So, you both were amazing. Dr. Catherine, you were amazing. Like, I felt like I was annoying you guys. I'm like asking all these questions and double checking things, just being, I don't know, feeling like I'm being extra, feeling like I'm being a burden, but I wouldn't have gotten through without you guys.
Well, I'll tell you that you are not a burden, and asking questions should be encouraged, it should not make you be made to feel self-conscious or like you're bothering anybody. And that's what we find discourages moms the most from asking questions, is that they feel they're made to feel bad. And so what we try to tell moms, though, is that if you don't ask, you lose. The healthcare provider is never going to lose. You lose. And so we are grateful that you asked all the questions, because otherwise you're still making an uninformed decision. So we don't believe in making unsafe decisions. We believe in making informed decisions with monitoring. And so you had both. And that's why you were able to successfully advocate for yourself, because you chose to listen to both. You chose to look at all the information. Sometimes women are in the hospital and they don't want to read articles and they don't want to listen to podcast episodes. And you did all of that. And I don't even understand how you did it, how you found the time to do it, but you looked at the information, you made informed decisions, and that is why you're here. And I just want to say, Rebecca loves you so much. And I know that you know that, but she, if she could, would turn the world upside down for you. And when I think about who we should have in our corners, it's someone like that, who knows you inside and out, knows your desires. When people are choosing who needs to be in the room with them, whether it's virtually or in person, it needs to be someone who is willing to put their life on the line for you. And she would do that without question. And I think you know that.
I do.
And so it takes courage, though, to do what you did, which is pick up the phone and put it on speaker and be like, hey, yes, this is my therapist on the phone. This is my doula on the phone. This is my midwife. This is whoever. It takes courage to do that. And a lot of people don't want to invite other people in virtually, but there should be no harm in that, because as a mom, you should not birth by yourself. You should not have to birth by yourself. You were in the room and thank God your best friend was there. But it's like some people have no one, and we're making decisions in the heat of the moment without other people who have information. So this happened because you are brave. You are courageous. You are an amazing mom. And so if you protect your baby like that when he's inside, cannot imagine the type of mother that you are to both of your sons. So thank you. Jessica thanked you, but we really thank you, because your story is stories that we want to continue to perpetuate, right, Jessica? Like, that is why Operation Mist is here, so that women are not forced into decisions, so that they have what they need, not just research, but they understand their bodies and they're willing to stand up and say, my body was designed to do this. So can you help me do this or not? And if you're not going to, I will move on. I will ask another midwife. I will invite another doula. I will call someone else, because we will not be forced into medicalizing what is supposed to be a natural process. So thank you for what you did. It is going to change lives. And I know maybe when we do a part 2, we'll talk about the legislative changes that are taking place because of you and your story, and people reaching out now and saying, hey, what can we do to make it better? It took you doing that, or you wouldn't be here where you are. So thank you for coming.
Thank you. I do want to shout out the womb sister, who was my doula, and Aja. Aja Humphrey, she's also my second doula, who also supported me with postpartum support, which I didn't even know that was a thing. And she's just been amazing as well. So yeah, but it was just having incredible women around me who could, just I was so uninformed prior to this. Like, I mean, really, really uninformed on a lot. And it was a crash course that ended up in a beautiful baby being here. So
praise God. Thank you.